Yeah, my case sounds like one of those people that all you have to do is just like sit there and go on like an hour monologue. That would be absolutely.
I really like to go back to this kind of thing. Yeah, it's like it's
Just gotta get out there and rebrand crypto. The word crypto. Crypto means cryptography. I'm not cool enough to know anything about cryptography, so it'd be interesting if we're gonna drop in since it's going to be between stuff.
somebody influence me things.
Yeah, I've been consuming sort of like Rose content.
Has he said anything on Bitcoin? I haven't. I haven't paid attention to him in the last couple of years. Just older stuff.
He accepts Bitcoin on his website.
Okay.
He just has like a Bitcoin.
Static address or something, which is a good sort of
Yeah, it's just a static. Bitcoin helps. You could set him up with like a samurai program or something.
Yeah.
Is your sister going again?
Cops out here.
Xfinity. So, Xfinity's the one. I know I probably need to upgrade.
Mine's not clear. I $40 a month for I think 50 now. It's 4 times what I used. The last year in Washington, I had DSL, which was 5 to 7 minutes down and 1 up. But it worked perfectly fine. It's good.
We got one person. their liking. And without these incredibly hardcore sort of high priests of the Bitcoin protocol, it would have been hopelessly malleated in all number of ways. And so there is a reason why someone would be incredibly protective of Bitcoin.
We don't take shit from anybody. We don't have to listen to what people kind of want to push for Bitcoin, because people think that they can come into the space, these big influencers, and they think that they can change Bitcoin and try to fix it and make it better. But we all know that Bitcoin fixes you. You don't fix Bitcoin.
Some people see toxic maximalism as like a bunch of mean people who are bad for Bitcoin, but in reality, it's the complete opposite. It's really good. I see toxic maximalism as like Bitcoiners from all over the globe, from all different walks of life, really coming together for one goal, and that's hyper Bitcoinization at all costs. So nothing else matters. Fuck your feelings. No one cares if you don't like Bitcoin. We're going to the moon and we're ushering in hyper Bitcoinization.
I won't stop until every single shitcoin channel is defeated, because they are poison, and that's my mission.
Because, if there is an escape, that escape will be used.
Welcome to Toxic Airwaves. Happy Labor Day. This is our 11th episode. How you doing tonight, Steve?
I'm doing good.
Nice.
Celebrating the socialist holiday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good day.
Looks like our stream quality is a little bit funky tonight, so hopefully that'll be fine on people watching, and I'll post this probably tomorrow, and I'll have a little bit better quality because I'm recording it locally, or at least that's the hope. But okay, we got Lurk. Okay,
There's
sweet. Lurk. I was worried, Lurk, that you were too busy celebrating socialist holidays like Labor Day. But yeah. Well, speaking of socialism, right off the bat, I just wanted to bring this up. So you tend to call schools communist training camps.
So Soviet specifically.
Oh, Soviet. Well, that seems like it's true in some parts of California, as that guy got busted.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
He had a Mao poster on the wall.
Yeah, it's right when we were leaving Washington, they were working on a bill that would put a whole bunch of healthcare clinics in public school systems, and they were very explicit. Like some of this, it'll do all the normal flu shots or whatever, but also like gene therapy, all kinds of crazy socialism. Young Lark.
Yes.
Yeah. It just continually blows me away. Like, I don't know, like how many people who are sort of traditional conservatives are still just completely asleep at the wheel, and they don't realize that, it's like none of this is has their well-being, any of our well-being, but especially them. And it's just, to me, it's a very pathetic position to be like that unaware and also that willingly powerless. It's very strange.
Yeah, I agree. I follow this story pretty closely because I thought it was pretty interesting. I've been following the happenings in the local Tucson school districts, and in Vail, Arizona, there was a giant uproar about the kids wearing masks a while ago, and they went and tried to tell the what do you call it? School board. Yeah, the school board what they were feeling. It's like such an incredible waste of time to go, because they assume that the politicians actually care and want what's best for their kids, and that the reason why they're not doing what's best is because they just haven't heard what they want. And they have an agenda. They're doing this stuff on purpose. I think this story of this guy in the school district, I mean, he's a little bit outside of the leftist Overton window, for sure. But I don't think, they probably knew full well that this guy was trying to get he was giving kids extra credit to go to Antifa rallies, which is pretty wild. But you know, they have those leanings, and the only thing you can do in a situation like that is opt out, like going to the school board and like screaming at the. I watched a lot of the school board meeting. It's just one parent or another getting up there and just being like, "You guys are trash. Like, what are you going to do about it?" And it's not what the school board's going to do about it. It's what are you as a parent going to do about it? You know.
Yeah, and that's. Yeah, I think to me, it's just at the end of the day, it's the power of the Bitcoin narrative and the power of the core approach that, you know, that's been taken since the beginning is, you know, did Satoshi outline in the white paper how we can redeem the fiat system and, you know, ways to lobby your central banker to be more responsive? No, of course not. You know, it was, no, this is a whole new technology that is going to be built out, is going to be used. And here's what it might look like for the future. There's no asking permission. There's no trying to figure out how to redeem the existing, you know, like we've talked about before. It's this idea of, you know, are we building on and redeeming the existing system, or are we building out a new parallel system? And to me, it's abundantly clear that the correct approach is to focus exclusively on building out a parallel system and letting as many people as possible opt into that, and then the rest of it can just do whatever they do. I don't care. It's not something of interest to me.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And I think it's really unfortunate that a lot of people struggle to see the importance of that. And it's one of the big issues I have with conservatism today. And well, I've got a lot of issues with conservatism, but I used to be somewhat conservative. I also used to be somewhat of a leftist, but yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, I think a lot of people are lacking a lot of power right now and realizing it, and they don't want to do something actually, you know, meaningful. They just want to like obfuscate responsibility and just sit on their butts and whine. I think that's really unfortunate. It's not helpful. Like, I mean, my personal standpoint, I don't want to be a part of this culture war. You know, I don't want to be like in the streets fighting, you know, the other team. I don't want to be, you know, having to argue with people. I just want to do what I feel like is important and really, you know, attain some semblance of freedom. And I think so many people are caught up into this. And when you look at the monetary policy, what's happening, the entire country is being absolutely demolished right now. And, you know, they're fighting with the school board. You know, it's like, it's just such a silly, you know, thing, or they're arguing about like statues or, you know, flags or the importance of the national anthem, and like trying to go and cancel athletes that take a knee. Like who cares? Like, yeah. You know, we've been dealing with these endless wars. We've been dealing with just awful tyranny here at home with this, you know, the Patriot Act and, you know, all the other bullshit, the mass surveillance, the money printing. I mean, it's just one thing after another. It's just a disaster when it comes to any semblance of individual liberty. And we should be really, you know, focusing on that. That's more what I'm focused on. And I think I can really, you know, achieve that freedom by not like buying into the bullshit and just doing my own thing and building out, you know, like you said, parallel system.
Well, and it's very practical too, because it's like their ability to exert power over us is directly proportional to, hey Zorn, what's up? Is directly proportional to the extent to which we use their system, their services, their, you know, their schools, their all this kind of stuff. It's, you know, if your kid spends 8 hours a day in, you know, one of these Soviet training camps they call public schools, then you are really, really at the mercy of these people and what they want to do. When the narratives they want to push, the views that they have are extremely important to your life. If your kid is, you know, at home or at a private school that you found and that you know, that aligns with your values, or, you know, any number of these other options, then that suddenly becomes way less relevant. And that's what, you know, I hope to see a lot of people wake up to, is how, you know, how much that model applies to basically every area of life. And that the more that we can opt out and be insulated from them, then the better.
Yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And that's something that's cool. Like, there is a giant movement happening in Arizona to homeschool kids. And it's, pretty fantastic. But yeah. So Lurk says that Cubans trying to stop playing the national anthem before Maverick games. And I think when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, is like your viewership and participation matters to these people. And like, if you don't believe in it, don't show up, and it's going to hurt their pocketbook a lot. It's going to really hurt them. And I mean, I don't know. I personally don't really believe a whole lot in the national anthem. I think the Pledge of Allegiance is pretty weird, and we titled this "Blind Obedience to Authority is Not a Virtue," and this is something that's not taught to people, is the idea of making moral decisions based on what is right and wrong versus just following an authority, and just the awful stuff that, happens as a result of that. Like we're seeing with policing, I mean, it just, how many people are in prison, just because people are following orders that have no business being in there, and that's super problematic and awful.
And there's so many, I think the main, like, kind of flip it, or I don't know, kind of have like an optimist spin. There's so many ways that we can opt out of it. Like, something that just popped in my head was, I knew a guy in Washington who lived in this, essentially a private community but it was really a small town. It was, I don't know, it was definitely over 1,000 people, but the whole thing had been built from one private piece of land in like the 70s. And it was the whole thing was fenced in. They had really strict like bylaws and all kinds of, that basically the police needed a search warrant to even enter what is effectively this small town. And so what they had created, which is, and none of them were, militant anarchists or anything crazy like that. They were just normal everyday people doing, normal everyday jobs who just wanted to be left alone mostly. And this is in Washington, which is a relatively communist state. And so, yeah, it was just this whole basically small little town that had no police, they had a minimal HOA. There was no really regulations really of any kind, like, and everybody there was just armed to the teeth. Like the guy that I knew there, all of his neighbors, like they, like there was a story one time, somebody was popping fireworks, not on 4th of July. And by the time the second went off, there were like 8 guys in assault rifles out on the street, like trying to figure out what was going on because they thought they were gunshots. they were just ready to go. Ended up being just fireworks. But anyway, all that to say, there are so many ways that we can create these ways to opt out and to have our own, kind of cities until this network of citadels kind of gets built out. But I'm guessing that's going to be 8 to 10 years out, maybe, hopefully not.
Yeah. AK-47 is joining us on a flight.
And shout out to Zorn for homeschooling for the last 13 years. That's awesome. Happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, all of this stuff has been a major wake-up call for me. And it's pretty interesting, like, trying to unwind all of the authoritarian programming, that's been instilled in me from being in the public schools. It's been an interesting process. I've been, reading some Larkin Rose recently and just like listening to a lot of, other thinkers outside of it. And it's interesting to just see, these different belief systems that I've built up, over the years being challenged. And it's just so obvious, right now in particular. But I think a lot of people are stuck in that rut. Like they just walk through TSA and like, this is completely necessary. I need to get felt up by this, fat asshole.
Yeah.
And, I need to take my shoes and belt off and, walk through this line like a, cattle. It's literally like cattle. I used to work with cattle, and it's like putting them through the chutes is like going through the metal detectors or, whatever the, sensor is right now. And yeah, I've definitely I need to make a round of calls to friends I had growing up, apologizing to teasing them for being homeschooled. But it's interesting. Like I've been writing a presentation for Bitcoin Day Omaha, which is going to be happening next weekend, and talking about time preference. And in our society today, the people that have been homeschooling that I know are the lowest time preference individuals. And it's pretty incredible comparatively to, the high time preference people that, put their kids in public school and treat it like a daycare. And it's a very different, and that's not like a, generalization that categorizes everybody, but that's definitely something that I've seen, which is kind of interesting.
Zorn says he's reading Lysander Spooner with the kids now. That's awesome. Constitution of No Authority is one of my favorites ever. Maybe last week or a couple of weeks ago, we shared a quote from Lysander Spooner about the relevance of the Constitution. Now it's toilet paper.
Let us know in the chat if the stream is being funky. It looks kind of funky on our end.
Yeah.
But you guys are participating, so it sounds like it's going through. But yeah, this stuff. What do we have on our topic list? So you wanted to talk about El Salvador a little bit?
Yeah, El Salvador is the big day tomorrow. Where's it tomorrow? The 7th.
Yep, that's tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow. So that's the day that it goes into effect as legal tender. The video is very laggy. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's what it looks like to us too.
Well, I think this is what ultimately happened. I wouldn't put it past them every time you go out there and challenge the state for them to mess with your video quality and stuff like that.
Yeah, because your internet's super fast.
Yeah, I just did a speed test and it was like through the roof. But yeah, that's tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think price is flirting with 53 last time I looked, 52.5. So I don't know. It's interesting. It'll be once the rocket ship finally takes out, when we see 100 for the first time and then 200 for the first time, I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how people respond to that and what people do. I'll probably just sit back and enjoy the show, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting, like with all the, bullshit and NFTs and stuff like that too, that are going to continue to go forward and be really popular. Try it on that. Maybe I'll just leave it at that. Maybe it's
the zoomed out view. Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess everybody's going to go and buy $30 of Bitcoin tomorrow, kind of symbolically.
I think so. I don't know what I'm going to do because I've been on a pretty good no KYC kick and I'm not looking to break that. So I'll have to see what I can do.
AK-47 says it's lagging, but I thought it was because United Airlines Wi-Fi sucks. No, it's not my Wi-Fi either. It must be like the third party that I'm streaming through. The video's frozen with Skeef with the funny facial picture.
For a little bit, it looked like I was doing an impersonation of Stephen Hawking.
Wow.
Zorn, yeah, that's a good one.
That's interesting. So Zorn says, I have several friends who no longer talk to me because of Bitcoin. Keep telling them to buy. They keep ignoring me and the price keeps going up. LOL.
There's this idea, I don't know who originated it, but American Hodls, who I heard it from, just this idea that and not just Bitcoin specifically, but saving, like investing in your future, it requires you to love the future version of yourself and to care for the future version of yourself and prepare for and take care of the future version of yourself. And not everybody, but like for a lot of people, that's just not the case. And so, when you tell them, here's this opportunity, here's how you can take control of your financial sovereignty, your future, etc. By doing this, it's like hitting a brick wall, or it doesn't resonate with them at all. And it's a lot of them, obviously, don't know anything about Zorn's friend, but a lot of people that I've encountered just don't care about that future version of themselves, and it shows through their actions. And I have no idea what the solution is to that, other than them at some point just deciding to care about that version of themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think like the way I look at it, I see Bitcoin as a long-term play, and investing. Like the thing that really blew my mind and orange pilled me initially was Saifedean talking about time preference in the Bitcoin standard and how the money influences time preference. And I think that's something that it's going to be have to be a multi-generational thing, you know, and these people have grown up in a society with very, very high time preference and very poor, you know, long-term thinking and just lack of opportunity in the future. You know, it's pretty hard watching houses double in price in 5 years and really like feeling hopeful and trying to save. And, you know, the shortages are going to, you know, kind of continue forward. And I think there's going to be kind of a mass nihilism. And this is, you know, kind of goes back to the idea of like homeschooling, of getting kids away from that mentality, because, you know, what ultimately happens in, you know, the public school system is everybody's like looking at each other for cues on how to live. And it's essentially even the blind. And I mean, that's just the fiat society in general. And I think it's super, you know, destructive. But yeah, I was having a talk with a friend about that, you know, recently. He was telling me he wished he bought more ETH, and I was like, dude, like I gave him the rundown of why ETH is, you know, awful, and he's like, yeah, I don't really care. Like, you know, I got some money, you know, recently, and I just want to feel good for a little bit and gamble it, you know, and try and like mint some NFTs and see what happens with that. And I'm just like, dude, where's that going to put you in the future? Yeah. And it was like we were on two entirely different wavelengths. And I think, you know, when we're having conversations with people like that, just it's time to, you know, just move on to somebody else.
Yeah. Zorn mentioned that phrase, people buy Bitcoin at the price they deserve. And I definitely agree with that. One of the earlier episodes, like I mentioned a little bit of my background, that I basically found and played with Bitcoin in 2012 but didn't buy any or get any or do anything with it. I just, you know, dinked around with the software a little bit and looked into it and decided it was techno-utopian nonsense that was going nowhere, and it was a waste of my time. And so I always tell, like, when people, I don't know, like I like to tell that story to people who don't have any Bitcoin, and to flip it on myself and say, I did not deserve 2012 prices. Like I didn't have the understanding or the background or the experience, you know, required to be one of those people that found it then and bought it and held on to it for a long time, which is, you know, effectively 0% of the people that were in the space at that time. And, you know, and like I said, I didn't think about it for years and years and years and years after that. And I don't, you know, that's not anything that keeps me up at night. Like, it's just, for me, it's just kind of an observation. It's an interesting observation about how exactly everything played out. But I don't know. Because I think it's easy for, if somebody has no Bitcoin, you know, they can hear that phrase and think, oh, that's just somebody shitting on me. And, you know, I always use that phrase to say, no, it applies to me just as much as anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the analogy of fiat money and the fiat monetary system being like a drug is a really good one, because there's just so much mass delusion wrapped in it and just insanity, very, very similar to like an active drug user. Like if you talk to somebody about their drug use, like when they're actively using, they're probably not gonna, you know, want to stop for the most part, or if they do, it's probably going to be a short lived experience for the most part. And you see this with people, they call it Bitcoin derangement syndrome a lot of times, but, you know, a lot of people will look at it and say, I wish I bought it a long time ago, and they're not willing to buy it today. And what you're just seeing is there's a lot of people that are living, you know, in insanity, repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And I don't know if they're expecting different results, but I don't know if they're expecting results at all. But I mean, it's just, it's crazy if you look at it. Like, they're just slaving away at the job, doing something, completely meaningless. And for what?
And that's what I like when I talk to people about Bitcoin. Like I try to come at, a lot of people will take a, I don't know, for lack of a better term, a Dan Hill type approach of, like very, very logical, very reasonable, but I don't know, like not, actually, I shouldn't have said his name. That's probably not terribly fair. But anyway, like I try to take I honestly, I try to take like a radical approach to it and come from a radical perspective, just to kind of wake people up, because most people, they're nowhere close to, entering a paradigm or the mindset required to actually even begin to understand what's going on, and to really like think deeply about, most of what I've learned is provably false and actually not that difficult to refute. And the truth has been wide out in the open. It's completely open sourced. It's discussed all over the place, and I just missed it until now. That's it's a very difficult kind of realization, and like most people aren't very close to being able to make that kind of a leap, on a kind of intellectual or philosophical level. And that's why I think, like I come at it from, starting with completely destroying and dismantling the entire state, literally, and how Bitcoin does that, why that's important, blah, 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 not, 100% year over year growth, increase in purchasing power, corporations adopting, like, no, none of that stuff, I think is terribly meaningful. Those are kind of little details around the edges. And AK-47 recommended Laser Hodl on TFTC. That was a really, really good. I listened to part 1 and part 2. That was very good.
Yeah, part 1 was great. I haven't listened to second.
So Laser Hodl said, you have choices to make. The state is not forcing you more to it. And he says it the best. Yeah. And there's a really, really interesting example in there where he talks about at what point do we stop being victims and do we start being willing participants of this whole system of tyranny? And, he says, if you're, the example he uses, he says, let's say you live in a high crime area where your house is getting burglarized all the time and your house doesn't have any windows or doors. He's like, that sucks that your house is getting burglarized, but don't you think you ought to take some really basic precautions to protect yourself? And he's like, that's encryption. That's Bitcoin. That's all these tools that are available. If you're just having your entire private life just completely raided top to bottom every day, scooped up in some NSA dragnet, but you're not using any of the tools that are completely free and out there and available, then, it's just, I think it's a very fair question. Like, at what point are you no longer a victim and you're kind of a willing participant in the whole system?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. Who the people that are the least stressed right now are the preppers.
Yeah.
People that are, prepared for this and have been, seeing this stuff coming for a long time and just a stable foundation under them. And kind of Maslow's hierarchy needs, state is essentially done, just chipped away at each layer to people just feeling incredibly insecure and unable to participate in things of meaning and really make critical decisions. This is a large reason why we have such a large portion of the population acting like zombies right now into, tribal instincts, essentially, and rather than, really taking back and evaluating. It's just so much easier to say, hey, I'm on this team. I think the way I like these people. I'm going to listen to this, figure to give me instruction on what to do, and prepping and moving outside. I mean, like you said, like Bitcoin's like encryption in general is like putting security system around your personal life to a large degree, and that provides security. And like the implications of like mass surveillance are huge psychologically and what that does to people, like being in the digital panopticon, of always being watched, and it's not freedom, it's the ultimate tyranny not to have privacy, and this is a major, major issue.
Yeah. And it's hard to have sympathy for people who don't use any of the tools available to them. I mean, another easy example is defense technology. I mean, you in a state where it's marginally more difficult to get a handgun than it is to get a pack of beer. And yet how few people, that very, very, if you live in New York, completely different equation. No, do not risk 5 years to walk around and protect yourself. But in Arent, where it's encouraged and anybody fog a mirror a felony can do it, why wouldn't you, a bit in your training and get some basic level of competence, and you're much more equipped to be a little bit more on a day-to-day basis and be able to protect yourself in a very accessible way. And so it's like, I don't know, it's like I have a lot of trouble understanding the mindset, but also having sympathy for lives in a downtown condo in a blue city in a blue state, and has really no meaningful protections, like doesn't use any of the tools that's available. And then, and if that's, I don't know. And then it's like, if these people then go on to talk about, the dangers of the state, the evils of tyranny, the, authoritarianism, this guy's bad in politics, this other guy's bad, to me, all that rings hollow. You've got nice words, but why aren't you doing anything to kind of improve your situation? That's, we could apply that to a lot of stuff. But
I think that's, people just have never really defined what the state definition of what the state idea of like a monopoly on violence being, a characterization of what the state is really good. And I think a lot of people struggle with that idea of self-defense, because they think that the police are supposed to them. And that was never the role of the police. The police have always been there to enforce the law, most of which are complete and utter trash. So, that makes the police, not the best people. And so are you going to rely on people that, throw people in cages to try and protect you and have no interest in doing it whatsoever, and are you going to rely on the state who is just, an apparatus built to take things from you arbitrarily to, take care of you? Like, no, I mean, I think that's what it comes down to, and why, this idea of anarchism, of authority being completely immoral, is so interesting.
Yeah, and we're empowered to use the tools that cause their ability to accumulate resources and power to trend to zero, and in a hurry. And that I think is super, super exciting. I got nuked on Twitter again, this time for DM stuff, which I didn't think they regulated as much, but apparently they do. But before that, my pinned tweet on that one was just a link to that scene in V for Vendetta when Evie comes out of the fake prison and she realizes all that stuff is fake. And, basically the idea was I had just kept meeting people who their experience of 2020 was very similar to, that scene in that movie of realizing how, I don't know. It's like, I feel like she realizes how powerful she is, how, she obviously realizes this entire apparatus was fake. The whole thing was not real. It was, spoiler alert, but hopefully you've all seen it by now. And yeah, I don't know. Like she just has that same like realization moment that he had in, early in the movie in that fire scene and in the whatever the health clinic camp thing that they were in. And I've just met a lot of people who had versions of that experience of 2020 of starting to realize how much of this is nonsense, what the solutions are. Some of them have found Bitcoin, some of them have not. but there's just a lot of people, I think, definitely not the majority, nowhere close, probably not even a significant minority yet, but in absolute numbers, a very high number of people who are waking up to what's going on. And I'm extremely optimistic. I'm very, very, very optimistic. I'm very excited. Like I think the direction this stuff is all going is super exciting. And I think enough people will wake up and we can, be absolutely militant about practicing freedom of association and associating with people who value liberty and value individual rights and value natural law and all these things, and then just opt out of the system of the people who do not. And I think, as number goes up, the more of us are empowered to do that, and that's a pretty beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like from watching the school board meetings, what's apparent to me is a lot of people are realizing for the first time that, this state apparatus does not serve them. And it was interesting watching, the January 6th debacle too, where a lot of these people that had been pro-police are, being treated awfully by the police and are realizing that they're not the good guys for the first time. And I think there's a little bit of a process that people go through, realizing that the state is attempting to victimize them, and there's this indignation that comes, and I think we're definitely a little ways out from a lot of these people realizing it, but there are more and more people. It's really interesting to see people like Michael Malice really have a giant voice, and to see people kind of flooding into the Libertarian Party, seeing how stupid the Republicans and the Democrats are. Not that the Libertarian Party is any way of a solution, but there's a lot more talk of liberty there than there is anywhere else, and I think it's just kind of a showing or telling that there is that group of people waking up. But like going back, like, man, these schools are going to be empty going forward. There's going to be so many kids homeschooled.
I hope so.
No, it's happening. Yeah, there's a huge movement happening, and or they're just going to be, the kids are just going to be truant. They're not going to be going to school. I mean, that's already been an issue, but these kids they're not going to put up with it.
A really, really awesome movie on the subject is called Captain Fantastic. Came out in 2016. Ben Price, a Bitcoin person on Twitter, he publishes his name, so that's fine. But anyway, he has been trying to get me to watch it for a couple of months, and I finally watched it this weekend, and it was really, really, really good. It's basically this dad is raising 6 kids out in the middle of nowhere in Oregon, and I don't know, there's all kinds of really interesting story. But yeah, Captain Fantastic. I rented it on Apple because I'm still an Apple cuck, but I'm working on that. But it's on pretty much every Amazon, whatever.
Nice. Yeah, I have so much homework that I've been assigned, specifically by you, but just in general.
It's good. It's a good film. That one, he, like, every time I'd see him, I'd be like, "Hey, did you watch that movie yet?" "No, I haven't watched it." He's like, "Dude, you need to watch it. It's like everything that you care about." It was very good. Like the way that he teaches them, like the relationship he has with the kids, like the way the kids go through the story in the movie. It's very good. I'm trying to tell it without doing any spoilers.
Yeah, one of the big problems with oh man, is it my whole computer that's having issues now? Come on, it's fucking hot as shit in here. Maybe that's why. All right. Well, one of the issues with hanging out with Bitcoiners is that you get assigned so much homework to do. Hanging out with people that are constantly wanting to grow and seek truth. And I think it's an incredibly beautiful thing. But it is a lot of reading and a lot of work.
AK-47, the movie is called Captain Fantastic. It's one of those indie ones with no famous people. It's a good one.
Nice.
Or at least nobody that I recognized. I thought for a second the dad might be Woody Harrelson, but it's not. Wait, did I get that name right? No. The blonde guy from Hunger Games. Is that Woody Harrelson?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, yeah, I got the name right. That's what I thought it was at first, but it's not.
I know who you're talking
Kind of
about.
looks like him.
Hunger Games. He was also in The Highwaymen, which is a pretty dope movie.
I have not seen that yet.
It's about
Zombieland. Have you seen that one? That's
yes,
hilarious. It's so stupid, but it's hilarious.
it's been a very long time since I watched Zombieland. But yeah, I'm pretty stoked about the future, and I think like one of the things I've definitely like shifted my tactics of what I'm trying to do in our local community to, instead of trying to get the mass adoption of everybody, just getting a few very strong individuals to create a network, because I think that's where we're going to be successful at the end of the day, is instead of going out and converting everybody to our ideology like the other groups are trying to do right now, is just separating. I think that's such a wasted effort trying to like pitch Bitcoin to people that are benefiting from the fiat monetary system and pitching it to just the masses in general, but going and using it with people and showing them, and if they're not interested, then they can buy Bitcoin whenever they decide to, but getting those people that are willing and interested off the bat into it, and kind of I definitely like take a radical approach in pitching Bitcoin as well, and I think it's important to do it because Bitcoin is it's a radical technology. This is meant to go after the state's source of power, and it's meant to protect individual freedom. Having connections that are radical.
Yeah, big Tucson this week too. Topic.
Yeah.
I don't spoiler alert to get the time, but one big one this week that expand on these quite a bit. Listen to that one.
I'm excited about that. Probably going to post it. I didn't post one today, just in anticipation for this one. But yeah, one thing that's cool about Bitcoin is how people can connect all over the country and all over the world together. Mm-hmm. But it's so amazing to get together with local Bitcoiners. Like for our Sierra Vista meetup at the end of the month, we're planning on potentially going out and doing a shooting event.
I saw that. That's gonna be awesome. I'm definitely going for that. I'm here all month, so there's no way I'm missing it.
We're either gonna get throat and lung cancer or go shooting, or both.
Yeah, I saw that. Cigar shop or shooting. Why not both? Just do shooting first.
We need a hobo code for freedom. Every time you say that word, the stream breaks up. Oh yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah,
freedom, liberty.
One thing I was going to say too is how many tangible steps there are that a person can take today, like getting, uncensorable income, ideally in Bitcoin, but doesn't necessarily have to be. But just like having some sort of secondary income flow is so huge, and then figuring out how to grow that. Obviously buying as much Bitcoin as possible. Like taking a person's physical location really serious. I mean, there's like once our, and also getting our income to be not location dependent. That's another big step a person, can take his fit and, probably take a lot of work and take time, but like setting that as a short to medium term goal. And then, because once our income is not location dependent, then, we can move to one of these rural counties in Arizona or, wherever, and just kind of set up, very, 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 not perfectly, but very well insulated from, all the nonsense and all the noise and everything like that. I don't know. That's my game plan. Like I've got like kind of my income's been location independent for quite a while. And so just trying to decide where to build out the short to medium term thing while I wait for hyper Bitcoinization to happen. That's kind of the dilemma currently.
Ragnar Leafraiser did a great podcast series covering those topics.
Check that out. I like him.
Yeah, it's called Guns and Bitcoin. I think. And yeah, he goes through and talks about, all that stuff. He talks about, privacy. Like a good practice that he talked about was getting a PO box and, registering everything to that, so your address isn't, public. Would be even cooler than that is to do that, and then also, rent somewhere completely off the grid where you don't have to like sign any papers to prove that you're there, or but yeah, I mean, BTC Pay Server, you can do all sorts of commerce out there without, having to KYC, which is pretty dope. I mean, there's so many things you can do. It's definitely not the most convenient, but we're in the position we're in because chosen convenience rather than what's right.
And I think to realize that going from 0 to say $500 a month is way harder than going from 500 to say 10 grand or something like that. Like it's getting started, figuring out how to actually, like, what can I do that's valuable across time and space, that doesn't require physical presence in a certain location. Figuring that out, and or as was the case with me, a decade ago, trying to figure this stuff out and realizing, the answer to that for me is nothing. So I should probably work on fixing that. So that's what initially got me into some of the different stuff that I do now. But
Zorn's saying some bullshit in the chat.
Zorn, Texas LARPs on Liberty.
Freedom's illegal in Texas.
No.
To be fair, freedom's illegal everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had the thought of wanting to move to El Salvador as well. But for me, what's probably one of the most important things is gun laws.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And I don't think you can have guns in El Salvador.
On that subject, Lurk, I saw earlier, mentioned like a potential bill in Panama. I don't know anything about that bill, but I do know somebody who has property in Panama and speaks very, very highly of it. Like apparently they do have formal gun laws, like formal, like Second Amendment style protections, owning a firearm, not getting thrown in a cage for having a handgun, things like that, which I believe is the case in a lot of Latin America. But I'm sure somebody here is far more informed about that than I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like Panama is, for a whole bunch of different reasons, is towards the top of, like, if I was gonna, set up shop in, maybe a Central American, South American place, or at least go visit. That is, I've never been there, but that would be, I think, a fun spot to check out.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how all of this plays out, because I think some places might look good now and may be absolutely terrible in a very short amount of time. And there's definitely some things that have concerned me about El Salvador, like the president's rhetoric around the vax and stuff like that. I think if you're not for freedom across the board, I mean, there's going to be freer places, jurisdictions that don't accept Bitcoin, and don't make that a primary, concern or issue. So and I think ultimately too, I mean, you just look at like the difference between Texas and Arizona. Like nobody's out there like promoting Arizona. You don't hear, there's a ton of people moving here. Mm-hmm. It's a very free state. We don't LARP on Liberty. And, if you're looking for places that are free and, good, you're probably gonna have to do some research and not just like go off of whatever the memes are. They're definitely doing some cool stuff in Texas. I mean, there's a lot of cool people that live in Austin and, are moving down there, but you still have to deal with just the crazy state and, their idiot governor that's just, following along.
Yeah. And my most basic point on Texas, obviously Texas LARPs on Liberty, but my most basic point is that it's no different from the rest of the South, and that any differentiation of, that Texas is this land of freedom, in my view, like any differentiation of Texas from, say, Georgia, or Alabama or something like that is all marketing gimmicks, I think. And, because that's all, I don't know. I like poking the Texas people and bothering them and annoying them, and it's just fun. And they'll say, oh, well, we're better than California. It's like, yeah, no shit. Of course. Like, it literally probably everything except maybe New York is better than California. Maybe even New York's better. I mean, it's just, or it's like, oh, we're better than the Midwest, or or like Nebraska. Kind of a standard Midwest conservative. Yeah, of course, Texas is better than Nebraska. It's better than Kansas. It's better than Oklahoma. But and that's just my big thing, is kind of to get people thinking about other places. To decentralize the Bitcoin community, in whatever way, I can, from a tiny little platform on Twitter that keeps getting banned and talking to people in person. But just to have the Bitcoin people spread around, like have a presence. I mean, two of my favorite places are Wyoming and South Dakota. Alaska too, I think, is a fantastic option. Zorn, I don't know what part of Canada you're in, but maybe it's close to Alaska and you can just hop across the border. I don't know.
Get the hell out of Canada, dude.
Yeah. This is LARPing hard with At the Alamo. Yeah, that when I called that a 200-year-old fort, or I said Texans need to admit, I know, even worse, I said Texas people, because I refuse to use the word Texans just because they hate being called Texas people. But I don't know. I grew up there, so it's fun. But yeah, it said, legalize cannabis, all this different stuff. And they said, and admit that your 200-year-old fort is a marketing gimmick. And this one guy commented on there, he's like, them are fighting words, sir. I'm like, okay. Like, you didn't tell me why it's not a marketing gimmick.
Yeah, when a Texas person says that them are fighting words, they're probably going to run at you with a chainmail suit and a sword.
And he was like, we have guns in Texas. I'm like, yeah, there's the rest of the South, and Wyoming and South Dakota and Arizona, and Nebraska has a lot of guns. I mean, Kansas had a lot. I mean, everybody's got guns except for the communist coast. It's,
I don't know. There's tons of guns there.
I mean, there's a lot of guns.
There's guns everywhere.
There's a lot of guns in Texas, but there's a lot of guns in Alabama. There's a lot of guns in Louisiana. I mean, I don't know. I just think this whole like Texas cowboy libertarian thing is about 98% marketing would be my primary point.
Yeah, it's just like an ICO.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think something else to look at, which I think is incredibly important too, is the county that you're moving into. Because I grew up in one of the worst counties in the United States, Cook County, Illinois, and right next to us was Lake County, Illinois, which was like a whole different story. I mean, like gas was like 20, 30 cents cheaper if you cross a road. And the laws were like entirely different. I think, the gun laws are a little bit friendlier because it's, another part of Illinois. So that's something to look into too. I mean, Cochise County is very different than Pima County. But then on top of that, not just solely the county, but also like you can enjoy, a city that you like by living outside of it, a little bit rural. And I think that's something that's super underestimated. A lot of people, push this idea of the suburbs. I think the suburbs are terrible. Like you don't want to be in the suburbs right now. But getting outside of the suburbs and into a little bit more rural areas is probably a good decision too.
Yeah. Suburbs tend to have a very high rate of Karens per capita, which is not good. That's a ratio you want to go in the other direction. And I don't know. I talk to a lot of people, live in one of the major cities, downtown area, and they're like, oh yeah, I wish I could, kind of going back to the earlier example, but it's like, I wish I could live, in a more free area or whatever, but, I like, being able to walk to the theater and stuff like that. Like, how can I make the two work? And I have no idea. Like, I think you have to pick one or the other.
Yeah. Trade-offs.
I'm super fortunate that stuff doesn't do anything for me. So it's a really easy decision, So like I spent some time in downtown Portland, Oregon, walking to all the typical, and this was before the Antifa riots too. So it was when Portland was actually awesome. And it was fun. I liked it, being able to be by all the bars and everything. But I don't know, did about a year of that. I was like, yeah, it's good. It's not worth all the compromises and, freedom and being able to do what I want. So move somewhere else.
I want to be able to walk to my Voodoo Donuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's something to say that isn't talked about a lot too, about, you know, moving out of the cities and how that could be good for your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Having space, I think, is really, really healthy for you. The less noise that's going on, being less bombarded by just all sorts of, you know, radio waves or whatever's going on is huge. You'll probably get better sleep. It'll probably be darker. And, you know, like something like I lived in, you know, central Tucson for a long time, for like 7 years, 8 years. And, you know, there was always like a concern of crime and, you know, stuff like that. And it's so much easier to like defend yourself and keep an eye on your property when you live with more space in between you and other people, which I think is huge.
I like that, Zorn. Zorn says he wants to be able to build whatever. He says, I want to be able to build whatever I want on my land, even if it falls